Looks like he's coming our way. Hopefully we can scare him away. All right, well, had a great day today. It's a long one. It's a grind. But we got fish. Man, we must have caught 500 squid today, and some of the 360 camera content that I got of the squid down below is unbelievable, but it's not that easy for me to just take the content from one of those cameras and put it on here. You have to do a lot of editing and exporting, so I'll have to share it later. And I'm sure I'll find some kind of B-roll to put in here for you guys to look at while I'm sharing people's voices. It's the end of my day of 8, and I'm going to sit here and at least get maybe a half an hour out. See how I make out. Who do we got? Tom Fish here with another story to share. Right on, Tom. Tom's a regular viewer and contributor here. Hunter. Hi, Steve. I've held out on my following encounter because it really isn't for the faint of heart, but I need to share it. After hearing a similar encounter shared by a fellow Club of No Return member on your channel. Any experienced hunter out there knows mistakes can happen and animals get shot that have young ones with them. What we did was not illegal, according to our state laws, but I'm sure a few folks here will get their panties all in a bunch after hearing this. Oh well. We don't support offended culture here, so take from what you will or leave it. Here we go. The day was Sunday, October 12th, 2014, which was the second day of our rifled deer season here in southwest Washington. I've hunted this area since 1984, and I've had many encounters and experiences here, and I've shared several with you, and you have read them to the people. I was pushing through a small patch of old-growth fir trees trying to spook any deer that might be in there out to my hunting partner, who was waiting on the other side. I was about halfway through when I started hearing a bunch of racket, and I thought I had kicked up a bunch of deer, and they're running through the bush towards my partner, but it didn't sound right. I went a few yards further when all of a sudden I stepped around a fir tree, and there was a black bear next to a big fir tree standing on its hind feet staring at me not 40 yards away. I had a bear tag, so I pulled my rifle up and I shot her in the chest. She dropped, of course, and as I was approaching, I heard rustling way up in the tree that she had been standing next to. I looked up and realized there were bear cubs up there. After calling my partner down to me, he decided to harvest one. He killed it, but unfortunately the cub got stuck up there, and the first branches on the tree were too high up to be easily reached to climb the tree. Some other hunters, after hearing all the commotion, came down to see what was going on. They too decided to kill one of the 2 remaining cubs, but they ended up wounding it, and it climbed to the top where we couldn't see it. And sadly, it was bawling. We considered cutting the tree down, but none of us had experience cutting a tree that size down, and besides, it was not our timber to destroy. I felt horrible. And then I realized the original racket I heard must have been the 3 cubs climbing the tree that the sow sent up there to get away from me. I went back into that patch of timber the following spring to see if I could find the bear skulls. I located the tree, and it wasn't hard to locate, as it was the tallest and brightest tree in the timber patch. And as I was approaching it, I noticed there were big tree limbs all around the base of the tree. Big branches, the size of softballs. They had all been snapped, not cut, right at the bases where they came out of the tree. I kid you not, Steve, the branches had been broken all the way up to 15, 16 feet above the ground. I poked around and I saw no bear skeletons, and then I started to get really creeped out, realizing the strength it would have taken to break those branches. There's no way a black bear could do that, and we don't have grizzlies in this area. I must have had my phone with me, but I didn't even think about taking video or pictures. Why not? I have no idea. Although it seems to be a pattern with me and others. I suspect that sometime after we got the sow back to camp, Maybe even days later, these forest people must have heard the wounded bear bawling, or maybe they smelled the blood, or for whatever reason they destroyed the lower branches trying to get to them. Since they didn't find any bones, it's possible they got them. The patch of timber has since been logged off. Man, I'd love to get up there and fish with you someday. If you're ever down to the Portland/Vancouver area, the first and original Vancouver, let me know and I'll take you out in the mighty Columbia River for sturgeon, steelhead, chinook, or coho, depending on the time of year. Tom Fish. Excuse me. Okay, Tom, that's quite the mishap to admit to publicly, that's for sure. There's going to be a lot of people going at you in the comments section, no doubt, but shit happens, right? Shit happens, and that sounds pretty bizarre. About the branches on the tree, who knows? I know these forest people have taken black bears from hunters who have shot them. I know that for a fact. In the past, they don't seem to be too concerned about what they eat. They'll eat anything. So yeah, who knows? Must have been quite the sight to see. Appreciate the email, man. Sorry I had to go through that shitty experience. That's a pretty dark one. But shit happens. This next email is titled, All the Things. Steve, greetings from Southeast Idaho. Yes, Idaho again. I worked at a juvenile corrections facility during graveyard shift. My job was to observe the dorm of young people as they slept in a dorm setting. There have always been unusual, and some say paranormal activities at that location for decades. It started out as a huge orphanage, then evolved into a reform school, and so on. Back in the 70s, this is one of the areas of the cattle mutilations that were never really publicly solved. My coworkers and I witnessed dozens of different types of weird things happening throughout the years that some might say were unexplained. However, just reporting the facts of what you see, think, and feel actually is the explanation, right? I saw a softball-sized orb pop into existence on surveillance camera one night. It was multicolored and glowing with movement inside of it. My brain instantly dubbed it Tinkerbell, like the one in one of the Peter Pan movies. It was inside the dorm sleeping area and levitating back and forth from one bed to another, hovering about 3 feet over the top of specific persons for a few seconds, then straight up and directly to the next. It dropped to its position over each sleeper as though to scan or sniff. I'm not sure why I had the impression of sniffing, scanning, or maybe just looking. There were 10 beds in that dorm room, and the orb did not go to all of them. Just 4 specific beds. It then zipped to the center of the room and blinked out. I didn't take my eyes off the camera for the entire 2 minutes this was happening. I knew I'd have to gather as much information as possible to report it. I knew what I was looking at and told my supervisor to pull up the video. Instead, I got that look of disbelief. I did investigate with other coworkers and found out the 4 youth who were visited, had been playing a card game called Magic earlier that day. Harmless game? Really? Fits right in with Ouija boards, casting spells or conjuring up things you might not be ready to deal with. Either way, not long after that I had a few incidents of slapping on the back side of my house. One time a defined triple tap on the window next to my head. Nothing there when I looked up. A bright glow suddenly lit my room up from outside the window, then suddenly stopped as I jumped up to see what it was and confronted it. Thanks to all these years of listening to your accounts and encounters with the good people from all over the world, I'm not surprised nor afraid. When things happen, it's easy to stop and think, identify, and go with it. Life is all about adventure and advancement. I do proudly display Sarah's decals and look forward to each morning cup of coffee while listening to your reading and musings. Also, I've attended multiple primitive living skills conferences and classes with contestants of the Alone series. They do have some excellent stories to tell of their experiences with that. Excuse me. It's helpful to be able to ask direct questions and have real conversations about what worked and what didn't. You'd be very excellent at doing that, but I'm not sure you would appreciate all the rules and regulations that are expected for the TV performance part of it. Carry on, Steve. We love and appreciate you, sir, and the joy you bring to the world. Danelle, appreciate the kind email. And what is up with those lights? What do you think, you guys? What is up with the lights, the orbs, the balls of light? What do you think? And appreciate those kind words and words of encouragement. Yeah, reality TV and me, we wouldn't get along. We just wouldn't. Who's next? What do we got here? This is titled, We Finally Know What All This Paranormal Was Now. Oh. Excuse me. Hi, Steve. Hope I find you well. I'll try to make this as short as possible. 2006, Upper Lower Michigan. Typo. 1 mile off the road, camper with a pond. 1 on lane to pond, the biggest apple tree loaded with apples. Overnight, the apples disappear, and the top of the tree all broken down. The game warden called and said probably bear, even though no claw marks. Number 2, setting a campfire support time. What? 2, setting a campfire supper time, calm wind, sound of the biggest tree crashing to the ground in the same area as the apple tree. We all jumped up, looked that way, saw nothing. Number 3, as they didn't stay there, usually went up weekends, and a few weeks later I arrived to find the roof of my shed had been collapsed. No wind damage noted. There was no tree that had fallen. As I inspected the damage, I saw that the I-beam center, the strongest part of the roof support, had been twisted like licorice. I couldn't believe my eyes. Number 4, right around October 20th, 2006, I'll never forget. I went out, arrived back at camper after dark, and as I parked, I was immediately struck with fear and dread. I'd been there camping there for years. I sat in the car for a moment trying to get a grip. I was so frightened. I sprinted for the camper, locked the door, went to sleep. Thankful for the couple of drinks I'd had, and I went right to sleep. And sometime in the middle of the night, I opened my eyes to light in the camper with no electricity. This is concerning. It was real bright, the brightest light I'd ever seen, an orb. It was now floating toward me, about a volleyball/basketball size. I felt calm and at ease of all things. It moved over me to where I could have reached out and touched it. I did not touch it. Light blue to whitish color. I watched in amazement. It was moving so slow, it then went through the wall and disappeared like the wall was never even there. It was gone. I found out later I'd been tagged. I explained. Number 5, at home, months later, 100 miles away. I and the wife were sleeping in the middle of the night. And in the morning, the wife said, "Did you hear that loud noise out at the shed?" I said, "No." She said the loudest noise she ever heard was going on at the tin roof shed, and it scared her so much she had started crying when she couldn't wake me up. I went to inspect it, and I found nothing. I've heard crashing of tree falling in my yard at home, also nothing. Thanks for helping us to be able to understand this. A lot of us had some puzzle pieces coming together thanks to you, sir. I saw a figure of something by the side of the road near my pond with glowing amber red eyes for a different time. I listen most nights, and thank you for your work. I'd love to meet you and have a beer. Fished, hunted, trapped all my life. D. Okay, D. Appreciate that, man. Keep us posted. Keep emailing. Keep it coming. Appreciate your time with kind words. All right, one more. And then that's all she wrote. I got to go to bed. I'm going to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think it's 7:30 right now. Ohio experience. Hello, Steve. My name is Sherry Palmer. My husband Victor and I watch your channels quite often and enjoy the experiences people are willing to share. Thank you for all you do in getting the word out on what's really going on in the world. My husband wanted me to share my experience that I had in the summer of 1990. I grew up in the Ohio Valley in a small village along the banks of the Ohio River. I woke up every morning looking at West Virginia. My dad and uncles grew up in a holler that had no access road, just a pathway, and it's a good mile back in the hollow. The only way to access the land was to walk, four-wheeler, or dirt bike. During the summer of 1989, my dad, uncles, and some cousins all got together and built a small cabin. It was around 10 by 20 build with a shed behind it for tools and an outhouse. It wasn't too big, but had a front porch and a big fire pit made out of cinder blocks. We'd spend weeks at a time out there. It was like being in heaven. My dad and uncles would sit around and tell stories about growing up out there and would always tell us, don't go wandering off or go riding by yourselves. We just thought they were crazy old men who didn't know what they were talking about. Next summer, my brother, our friend H, and I, we were teenagers, decided to jump on the dirt bikes and go out to the cabin. We started before it got dark, but by the time we got out there, it was pitch black. It was a good 20-25 miles out there from where we lived. When we got there, all we had was a flashlight that was inside the cabin, and the batteries were almost dead. We didn't have the knowledge or skills to make a fire or to get the fire burning wood stove going. We had no plan once we got there of what we were going to do. And as we were standing there, clueless, trying to figure out what to do, we heard what sounded like sticks or rocks hitting the metal roof. We didn't think anything of it. There were raccoons out there, so we thought we were throwing branches at the roof. We thought maybe they were hungry and knew we had a bag of dry dog food in the cabin by the door to feed them. They would always come onto the porch and tap on the glass in the door. I grabbed a scoop of dog food and dumped it in the bowl outside the door. And I shined the flashlight around, but I didn't see any raccoons on the porch, so I figured they were hiding. I went back inside the cabin. We started talking again about what we were going to do, and what sounded like rocks and branches being thrown got worse and louder to the roof of the cabin. We just looked at each other, scared shitless by that point, decided we needed to get the F out of there. We literally ran out, jumped on our dirt bikes, and hauled ass out of there. Got to Route 148, and we didn't look back. And we never spoke of it after we got back home, nor was the experience ever mentioned any time after that. I've never gone back out there. It's been almost 34 years. I left for the Army in 1992, and the only time I went back out there was after I retired. I told my husband about it and took him out to where we had to park the car because I wanted to show it to him, but I thought about that night and how scared we were as teenagers. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and told him we needed to leave. That was in 2015. I've gone back home, but we've never gone back out there again. Thinking about it today, I have to question why/how raccoons would be throwing rocks and or branches at the roof of the cabin. There weren't trees overhanging the roof to the point that it would be hitting the roof. Well, anyways, that's my experiences and wanted to share it. I don't care if you use my name. Thanks to you for all you do. P.S. Love the rants. Okay, Sherry Palmer, appreciate you sending that in. You know what it was. You already knew what it was before you emailed. I appreciate that. Did I read this one? This sounds familiar. Well, let's start. Here we go. What do we got? Short one. Welcome to the land of WTF. Hey, Steve, I want to start by saying you are the last of a dying breed. They don't make them like you anymore, and that's too bad. Appreciate the kind words. The world that we have been groomed to believe we're living in is fake. This is a truth I firmly believe in, and I wish more people could lift the veil. My experience did not involve Bigfoot. I actually don't know what this entity was. What I do know is that for about a month, every time I went outside at home, in the mountains, pretty much everywhere, there was always the sound of a jet above me. But nothing was ever there. And jets don't hover. Anyways, long story short, I was at work one night and bored. I was staring out the window, and all of a sudden I see in the reflection of the hallway behind me that someone had come out and was holding onto the handrails. I worked at an assisted living space, so I figured it was one of the residents. And as I took in the features of this resident, I realized that it wasn't a resident. I'm not sure, but it resembled one of those gray aliens. Only this guy's eyes were gold and seemed amazed to be looking at me. When I turned around to face it, I saw it go around a corner at the end of the hall. I spent the next 2 hours searching for this thing to no avail. I left work in tears, knowing that I just experienced something that no one could explain. Honestly, I do think it was some sort of E.T. Maybe just watching me or us or everyone, who knows. I tried to share my experience and was told it was a ghost. If so, it was an alien ghost. Anyways, life hasn't been the same. I realize that we are definitely not alone. I think there is a lot going on in the world, and it scares me because I have children. I don't want them to have ever experienced terror like I know is possible. Anyway, thanks for all you do. Hope that at some point all the lies can come out so we can all be ready for real life. Thank you, Mandy. Appreciate the email, Mandy. It's kind of creepy. Kind of creepy. Just teach your children truth, right? Teach the children truth. Teach them to not be scared of things they shouldn't be scared of. But anyways, I think... Holy cow, you guys, I'm yawning. This is totally relaxing me. I think I should probably go to bed. Unless I can find a short one to read. Got a lot of long ones. Give me 1 second. What do we got down here? Hold on a minute. Let me have a look anyway before I make tracks. Scrolling down. Oh, it's a whole bunch here. Holy shit. All right, this next one is titled Extradimensional. Hi, Steve. I've watched most of your videos and I really love them. The content as well as the reason. I send my sympathy. What? I send my sympathy? Hair stood after life than we do. Huh? Might be some typos in this one. After the Sasquatch, I've never seen one, thank God, but I've had experiences. My grandfather had a cattle farm in Wilkinson County, Mississippi. About 1,800 acres that I spent summers and every holiday growing up exploring and hunting and fishing on. It's crazy how many times I ignored the sounds and tree breaks and formations because I could not place them in my paradigm. I'm somewhat bothered by how long it took me to accept the reality of the forest folk. I saw the casts and the videos for years, knowing how impossible it is for them to have been hoaxed, due to my experience in the woods. The reality is, as you well know, if you see a deer or a turkey track and it is very fresh, then the animal's close, right? My funniest or creepiest experience was one morning when I was deer hunting on our farm. I was in a shooting shack well before daylight, one morning with my old favorite gun, a 300 Winchester short magnum, which is very flat shooting and always flatten the deer at the cost of one shoulder. Anyway, all of a sudden, the loudest braying of a jackass, loud enough to knock leaves off the trees, splits the air. It was so freaking loud, I could feel the wood of the shooting shack vibrate. It did not stop when the sun came up. This damn jackass was ruining my hunt, and I thought I must have belonged to a neighbor across the creek, and it must be on the creek as loud as it was. It was the only thing making the noise, as the usual chorus of crows and owls at dawn were quiet. After about a half an hour, I had enough, and I decided to go scare the damn thing away from the creek. And as I headed towards that sound, it moved, and was definitely on our land, and it was still braying. I was so tickled about my holiday hunt over my favorite field, I was about ready to rid the world of this donkey. However, as I tried to close, it seemed to move 90 degrees to my approach. This was strange, but I just picked up my pace. This country was in the woods where the ridges ran off of the pasture, straight up and down. And suddenly, I realized there was no way a donkey could stay away from me and out of sight. Then I began to feel a real fear, and my 300 did not give me the expected confidence. I decided to get the hell out of there, and when I did, the sound stopped. Then the hair on my neck stood up, and I was ready to piss myself. I did not get comfortable until I was in my truck with the engine running. Looking back, there were many times that I heard things that did not fit, from tree knocks to vocalizations. You know what I mean. When you know the local woods, you know what sounds are normal. Steve, are we this well programmed that we ignore what is right in front of us? And this is not limited to the subject of Sasquatch. There is so much going on right now that not paying attention to what we see or feel is likely to bite us in the ass if we do not wake up. I'm 60, on disability, or I'd be headed somewhere like you are. I'm trying to find work with horses or some such in the country because I think that away from the city is going to be the safest place very shortly. I've been researching the paranormal for over 20 years now, and things are going to hit the fan before long. As you mentioned, Melba Ketchum before, I just want to ask you to pay attention to what she said about the paternal DNA. Steve, she said that this DNA did not fit in the scheme of evolution at all. It was neither hominid nor anything primate like chimp or gorilla family. It is therefore not something that should have been able to breed with a human. I've not found anything recent from Miss Ketchum, as she's been largely driven from public, those bastards intent on deceiving us. By those bastards intent on deceiving us. But I think it is likely the paternal DNA that is key, or at least a factor in the cover-up. Think about it, man. It looks like the very existence of these creatures is paranormal. Nephilim? I don't know. But check out Sasquatch, Ontario, because if Mike is not lying, and I don't think he is, then these forest people are a whole new ball of wax. They seem extra-dimensional, as crazy as it seems, and there are UFO and orbs thrown in for good measure. I have never before sent an email to someone on YouTube, but I feel this is a very important subject. Our stupid government seems to be at war with them, and, like you pointed out, if they attacked us, they could wipe out a city overnight. And if you take the extra-dimensional aspect, they could maybe extinct us shortly, if so inclined. But they must be largely peaceful and kind if you take in the numbers of children saved. If you take in the number of children saved, I think they have saved a few from what David P. is after. Please excuse the typos and the bad keyboard issues. Bless you for all that you do. This world would be a better place if 1 out of 100 cared as much as you did, and as much as you do. Thanks, Taft Ferguson. Appreciate the Kind words, Taft. Interdimensional. They're inter something. They are inter something in and out of where we are, without a doubt, or at least out of our vision, right? They are at least in and out of our vision when they decide, and sometimes when they screw up. That's a fact. All right, one more. One more. A fan of your channels. I want to tell you about an encounter I had some 20 years ago. I do believe this is what cemented my interest in this topic. I was interested in Bigfoot when I was a kid, but I thought there was just the one seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film. This incident is the reason my interest has gone to the level it has now. I was married in June of 2000, and I moved in with my parents in a subdivision in northwest Indiana, Roselawn to be exact. My buddy and his girlfriend had a baby, and then a few months later, my wife and I had a baby. It was about 6 p.m. and dark out when my buddy and his girlfriend came over to visit my wife and I and our baby. My buddy and I went out to smoke, and after a couple cigarettes, we were saying how we were getting bored talking about babies. I suggested we get a shotgun and I'll bait the raccoons and we'll shoot them. We've been having problems with raccoons, and I'd left meat out to rot for later. We turned the floodlights on outside and sat in the dark in the garage waiting. The rotten hamburger meat was 20 yards or so out in front of us, and after a few cigs with no luck, which was surprising, I suggested we go to the other side of the street, across from the driveway where there's a ditch with a culvert. My plan was for him to scare them out at one end, and I would shoot them when they came out the other. I had my father's Remington 1100 12-gauge with game loads. Excuse me. We walked to the end of the driveway and stood in the street discussing the plan, and my buddy said, "Well, there's a dog in the road." And I happened to say, "Well, I'm not here to shoot a dog." And as soon as that was said, that's when it began. Right then and there, maybe 2 houses away, I could see it. I could tell it was a dog, but I couldn't tell what kind. It was night, and the only light was from a couple of nearby houses. And as soon as I made that statement about the dog, we heard this loud, hair-raising, blood-curdling, high-pitched scream. I can best describe it as a woman being tortured or murdered. And it was so loud. It didn't come from far. At the time, my parents had a neatly trimmed shrub privacy fence, maybe 4 feet high, separating the property and the neighbors. The thing was behind me, just inside the neighbor's yard at that border. Obviously, we froze. My buddy and I, shoulder to shoulder in the street, both witnessed a creature at least 7 feet tall coming running out from that row of shrubs, screaming. It was closer to me as it ran along next to the bushes, right next to us, 15 feet away. It leapt across the road with 1 foot onto the road, the next into the woods across from the newly developed subdivision. We heard it scale a tree. Then it screamed down at us in a different tone, a warning. It happened so fast we were still frozen with fear. When our bodies unfroze, I remember opening the bolt on the 12-gauge and letting the shell fall out because I didn't want an accidental discharge in mid-flight. Then my fat ass ran like lightning. Obviously, none of us are experts, but I don't believe this thing was a Sasquatch or a dogman because it was lanky instead of bulky. And here's what I saw. A tall creature. I say at least 7 feet, but my buddy, who's a carpenter and would know better, says 8 or 9. Long, black, greasy or wet, matted hair covering the face. What I saw, the fingers were long and lanky and stringy like melting flesh. The legs looked weird. The more I research, it sounds like how people describe the dogman's legs as being backwards. We could feel the thump of this thing hitting the road and jumping into the trees. And for some reason, one of the first things that came to mind was that somebody must have shot an arrow past me, hit a deer in its lungs, and made it go back on 2 legs. It had buckskin/flesh-colored skin. I don't know what else made me think of a deer. I believe this was November 1st, 2000 this took place. I remember the date because I was thinking maybe the neighbor had a Halloween party. And people were so drunk the next morning they woke up at 6 p.m. and played a prank. But what sense does that make when a guy has a 12 gauge in his hand? You think of so many different things. A clone experiment, DNA mutation on the loose. You think of anything it could possibly be. We ran to the house. The girls obviously knew something had happened. And once we told them the story, my buddy and his wife decided they should go home. They're letting the car warm up, and we were all calming down. I told them I'd go get a different gun and walk with them to their car. Half an hour later, as they were leaving, I had him shine his headlights into the ditch where we'd seen it. I'd walked next to him in his vehicle with the brights on. It started to snow, and there was a fresh blanket covering the ground, and I didn't see any footprints or obvious signs of it. But I could tell in the brush and twigs where I went. Sorry, what? But I could tell in the brush and twigs where it went. My name is Nathan Orlando. I'm not afraid to tell my story with my first and last name. I didn't ask to see what I saw, but I'm glad I did, to be honest. It is what it is. I tell some people the story and they say, what were you drinking or smoking? I've been high. I've been drunk. I have used hallucinogens. At that time, I obviously was not, as me and my buddy were freshly married with newborns. Besides, I don't care how much you drink or smoke, two people aren't going to see the same 7-foot-plus tall, two-legged creature at the same time. Cam and Leslie, look away. F those who don't believe me. F those who don't believe the audiences here. F the corny, choreographed, scripted TV shows. It happened. If I was going to make this shit up, it would have been more imaginative. I don't have my friend's permission, so even though I don't think he'd mind, we'll leave his last name out and call him Dan. If any of you have questions for me, feel free to email me. And P.S. I'm not making fun of the theory of UFOs and Bigfoot being related, but I chuckle at the thought of 10 to 15 of those hairy bastards thrashing around in a little bitty UFO with those 4 gray midgets. So there you go. Another voice is heard. Creepy. Pretty creepy. Why do they scream? Why do they bother being near us? I don't get that part. Like, why? Why? All right, that's it, you guys. I'm going to bed. I'm so done. So done. I got to get it done tomorrow. We got to get these people some more fish, more experiences. But now I got to find some B-roll to throw down here for you guys to gaze at while you hear my annoying voice and listen to all these great, honest people chime in with their truth. Share my story at howtohunt.com, you guys. That's where you get heard. Read and heard, word for word. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm hanging in there. I'll be back tomorrow.